I'm a professional dancer, and I'm going to share my journey with how I was able to join the Actors Equity Association, along with some pros and cons to joining the union. I am in my 30s now, so I have been auditioning and performing in shows professionally for about 10 years. I'm also going to share with you how you can join the union now, because the guidelines have since changed since I joined. So I've been dancing my entire life. I even went to college for dance. I have a Bachelor of Arts from Oklahoma City University. It's such a random school. I know it's literally in the middle of the country, but it is a very popular school specifically for musical theater style dance. I was dancing 5 days a week, learning how the industry worked, learning how to be professional, and I still got my bachelor's. So like most college students at my school, I was not part of the union. During the year, my school put on various performances that the dancers could perform in, but we weren't doing any shows outside of school. In the second semester of my senior year, there was this theater in Oklahoma City who was actually putting on Oklahoma the Musical. I went and auditioned. We had to sing first, and then they invited you back to a dance call. I got invited back. There was actually a little bit of an overlap with some people who worked at my school who also happened to be working on this show, and I ended up getting the job. This theater is called the Lyric Theater of Oklahoma, and this is an equity theater. This is my first professional job out of college. I was so excited. It was very cool to perform Oklahoma the Musical in Oklahoma. The theater putting on Oklahoma was called Lyric Theater of Oklahoma, and this is an equity theater. And even though I was hired as a non-union actor, this qualified me to join what's called the EMC program. The EMC program stands for Equity Membership Candidate. How it worked is that if you were part of the EMC program, you had to hit 50 points before you were eligible to join the union. And each week equaled 1 point. So you had to work 50 weeks before you were like, hey, I could possibly join the union now. Equity now no longer has this EMC program, but for a non-union person like myself, this is how I assumed I was probably going to join the union. So I finished Oklahoma the Musical. It was my first professional job ever, and I was now officially a candidate to possibly join the union in the future. This contract was pretty short, so I believe it only gave me 3 or 4 points or weeks. About 2 or 3 weeks after that, I already had another show lined up that I also auditioned for my senior year of college, 42nd Street at a theater in Kentucky. This was also an equity house. And what was especially cool about this theater is that I was in the inaugural cast. Like, we literally were the first show that this theater ever did, and it was the best time of my life. I'm a tap dancer at heart, so getting to do 42nd Street with like the original 42nd Street choreography, it was just so good. So the second professional job is done. That also was very short, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. So let's just say at this point, I have a total of 8 points. I am from South Jersey, so after college, I did not move to New York City right away. I instead stayed in South Jersey and commuted to New York City for auditions, which is such a full circle moment because current present me is doing the exact same thing. So after that, I was a non-union performer who went up to all sorts of auditions. I started commuting to New York probably like 3 to 4 times a week to audition for non-union things and union things. I was in final callbacks for a few things, and then eventually I ended up booking Mary Poppins at a theater in South Carolina. This contract was really great because it ended up being 8 weeks long, so I got 8 points doing that. So we're gonna split the difference between the first 2 contracts and say 3 weeks for the first one, 4 weeks for the second one, 8 weeks for the next one. So at this point, we're at a total of 15 points. I still was in South Jersey. I went back to auditioning, and then there was a theater in Ocean City, New Jersey, which is about an hour away from where I'm from, doing a production of West Side Story. I went, auditioned for that, and ended up booking that. Now this production gave me no weeks because this was a non-union production, which meant we didn't have to follow any equity rules. Like, it was just basically a lot more loose, and you didn't have any kind of union like guidelines over you. But before that contract had started, I was constantly auditioning for things, just like putting myself out there as much as I could. Like, I had callbacks going on, I had a ton of stuff going on, but still I was auditioning as a non-union actor because I didn't qualify to join the union and I hadn't been offered my card by anybody. So as I was in West Side Story, I remember being in rehearsal and I got a voicemail from this theater in Connecticut called Goodspeed Opera House. This is a really awesome theater. A lot of pre-Broadway shows go here first before going to Broadway. It was a place that I had always wanted to work, and I got a voicemail. This is the casting director for this show at Goodspeed. We're just checking your availability and seeing if you're available for these dates for this show. And I was like, what? So I call back instantly. I'm like, yes, I'm available. It was right after the contract would be ending. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm available. What happened was somebody dropped out and they needed a replacement, and they called me. I think I had a month in between jobs. I'm still at 15 points. This job that I got at Goodspeed ended up being 3.5 months long. So I believe I got 14 points from it. This is a new musical, and I was actually swinging this show, which meant that I covered the 5 women ensemble members who were in this show. And at any given moment, if one of them was out, I was going on for them. Being a swing is not for everybody. I absolutely thrived in that environment. I loved getting thrown on. I loved just kind of like trusting my instincts, and it was just so much fun. That show closed on a Sunday. Literally the next day on a Monday, that same exact theater was having auditions for their musical, Thoroughly Modern Millie. And at first I was like, oh, I'm not gonna go. Like, I was just there for 3.5 months, like blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, what am I doing? Of course I'm gonna go. I went to the audition. It went really well. The people in the audition already knew me and had liked working with me at the show previously. So I ended up booking that show as well. I was once again hired by them as a non-union swing. The first contract I had at Goodspeed, I think I went on 6 times. This contract with Thoroughly Modern Millie, I went on 30 times. I went on a lot. This is where it starts getting good. This contract would not have gotten me to the 50 weeks, which is when I would have been able to qualify to join the union. But what they did do was offer me my equity card. So what this meant, if I chose to accept, would be that the last 2 weeks of the contract, I would officially become a member of the Actors Equity Association. I accepted, and those last 2 weeks, instead of getting paid my non-union rate, I got paid my equity rate. It was really cool. I just it was just such an amazing experience. So how I ended up getting my equity card was that this theater offered it to me. I'm extremely fortunate that this is how it worked out for me. I do feel like I would have gotten my card pretty soon after, because at that point I would have been at like 45 weeks or something. So I would have been very close to getting it, probably on my next contract. But getting offered my card was a really awesome way to get into the union, and I am so fortunate that it worked out that way. So now we're gonna get into how you can join the union today and the pros and cons. The first way to join is through what's called open access. And this is basically if you have worked in an equity theater that's within their geographical jurisdiction, you are eligible to join the union. So for example, my first professional job, it was at an equity theater. I don't know if that's in the jurisdiction. I would assume it is. That would qualify me to possibly join the union. There's an initiation fee due regardless of how you join the union, but $600 is required if you're joining the open access way. The second way is how I joined, and you can just be offered your equity card by a theater. This is something you would want to negotiate with the theater. If you have an agent, you would definitely want to have them negotiate. Because even in my case, I was joining the last 2 weeks of the contract, so I was only being paid the equity rates for 2 weeks. I still had to pay the initiation fee, which I don't know what it is now, but I think it used to be $1,000 or $1,100. You don't have to pay that all at once. You can, but you can do a payment plan. But being handed your card is definitely the easiest way to join. And finally, you can join if you are already in a sister union of Actors Equity, which would be AGMA, Canadian Equity, things like that. I am so happy that I am in the union, but I will say there are definitely pros and cons, like there are to any situation. One of the biggest pros of being in the union is that every single time you go to an audition, because it's an equity audition, you are required to be seen as long as you get there before the call is closed. For example, if a call is starting at 10 a.m., they will start calling the list of online signups at 9:30. They cannot close the call until 10 a.m. at the absolute earliest. Most of the time, they will leave it open the entire duration of the call. So even if you show up at 11 o'clock, as long as it's not closed and you are a member of the union, they have to put you in the next group. Because let's just say 500 people show up, they're definitely not going to see everybody. They might be closing the call right at the start time. The other benefits are you can get health insurance. You are required to be paid more. There are certain rules that equity theaters absolutely have to follow. In one of my last contracts, I was what's called the equity deputy, which is basically the liaison between the theater and equity. So if anything is going wrong or anything is a little questionable, I was the person who would end up emailing our equity rep, and they would kind of have to deal with it with the theater. So it's like being in any kind of union. There are specific rules and regulations that theaters absolutely have to abide by, because otherwise they will have to answer to the union. But like anything, there's cons, and some of the cons of being a part of the union are that there are way less job opportunities. This happened with me. I joined the union in the summer of 2017, and I did not book my first equity contract until 2 years later. I ended up booking a TV show in between that, so that was really cool. But I have to say, I was definitely going through a tough time. I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I book something? It just took so much longer because there were not as many contracts available. So that is how I joined the Actors Equity Association. I can also share how I got every single job on my resume if that is helpful. I find it interesting because a lot of the times, it's a random agent appointment. I actually was a replacement 2 times. There's just so many ways that you can get a job. But all in all, I'm really happy that I'm a part of the union. Of course, there's gonna be cons to any situation, but for me, especially someone who lives in South Jersey and commutes to New York City for auditions, knowing I'm gonna get seen and knowing that the casting people are gonna get to see me put myself out there, even if it takes a bunch of times, it's so worth it to me. Because all it takes is one yes, and I've gotten them before, so I know that I'm gonna get them again. So let me know if you have any questions about the union. Everybody's experience is super personal to them. There really is no right or wrong. It's kind of just a feeling you have to go off of, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you on the next one.